Hey, Merry Christmas from Linda, from Fluffy on the White, and Chocolate with the chocolate ears, and Happy New Year. And these are the fresh life that, to me, makes life worth living all over the planet. It's our love for each other and for our animals. That's what this season is about. So I wish to all of you love and health. And because they are kitties, I'm going to let them down onto the floor. And then I'm going to talk to you about something that I think is really relevant to the Tom DeLonge disclosures and several other things. So there go Fluffy and Chocolate. And I am glad to be back here on this holiday. And since last Saturday, December 16th, 2017, a kind of historic day in my mind now, I have learned that more will be coming soon from the Department of Defense and intelligence officers working with Tom DeLonge. And when I say coming from the Department of Defense, I mean more releases that will have been sanctioned officially from DOD. I think they have shown that what they want to do is have a pattern that those that will be talking, like in the interviews, Luis Elizondo, the past several days, and Mr. Mullen and a few others, that they want to have been retired from government service before they join to the stars, so that they are speaking in a kind of a quasi unofficial but still officially backed role. And so when I say that I have learned that there will be more coming in the near future that will have this sanction, it will probably be more photographs, more videos, more information to be shared with the public for the first time ever in 70 years since World War II as official releases of real material that our government has in its archives, its vaults, and are about, is there an alien presence on this planet, in this solar system, beyond in the Milky Way galaxy, and throughout the universe, some kind of a presence that is related to that question that has always been hanging there since humans looked up at the stars. Are we really alone on this planet in this vast universe? And I can say with some confidence that the answer is no, we're not alone, and we never have been alone. And one of the haunting questions, and it is haunting because I don't know the answer, and nobody that I know knows precisely the answer. But it goes back for me to around 1992, 93, 94, when I was dealing with two men through Ray Boucher that I have talked to about in the past, and I'm only bringing up as a context for what I'm going to share tonight. And they were NSA, ID, and DIA. And they're the ones who communicated with me through floppy disks. Back then, that's all we had, those little floppy disks. And I printed out in my Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness, everything that they communicated to me by sending, they sent it in FedEx, and they also sent through Ray Boucher, who was in Nebraska. And we did this for some time. And I have always thought that their floppy disk communications were haunting and confusing, and in some ways perhaps alarming. And they all had to do with this, that some of the alien intelligence that we are dealing with on this planet fall into a category that they would call neither benign nor neutral. It's a phrase that they use, neither benign nor neutral. And I can still remember the first moment that I read that in one of their communications, and I sat there for quite a long time thinking about those words, knowing that I personally have been exposed since '79 to the difficult subject of animal mutilations and then human abductions. But I've also been exposed in the more than 1,500 now interviews that I have done with people in the human abduction syndrome. Some have been literally cured or made healthy from, say, cancer or a disease. Some have felt that their lives were falling apart, and then out of some interaction with a being and light, their life seems put back together. Those are the people who feel that some of the beings that have interacted with them fall into an angelic category or something that really cares about perhaps humanity in a way that we have never understood, and that until we know all of the background and the truth about the alien presence here throughout the solar system and the galaxy and the universe, perhaps we're never fully going to understand who we are, what it is, and why we have the spiritual traditions that we have. Demons and devils versus angels and light. Because I have been exposed to information about both a positive ally in some alien intelligences and negative, deceiving intents in other, you might even categorize them as an enemy intelligence. As we head into this holiday that is supposed to be dedicated to the birth of an avatar who tried to teach love instead of hate, life instead of death, light instead of darkness, I would like to share with you an experience that I had in Peru that has helped me walk this difficult path that I have been on since 1979, trying to understand why animal mutilations, why human abductions, why should my government be lying and have policies of denial and misinformation instead of in a government of, by, and for the people, always telling the truth. And in this case, having to do with alien intelligences, the truth is we're not alone in this universe. We never have been. Now, I wonder how many of you have heard of, this is the full formal title, The Testament of Amram from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'm referring to, and I'm going to use specifically the translation by Professor Robert Eisenman for the very first time from the beginning of the 1990s. This was a Dead Sea Scroll that somebody made some authoritarian decision that these particular scrolls had to be kept out of the public. It even took legal action and lawsuits to extract this scroll that I'm going to read as a prelude to Peru. And for you to know that there really were fights about whether those Dead Sea Scrolls, some of them from the Middle East that were not discovered until the 1940s, that some of them should never be seen by the public and the media. Now, this is what the Amram scroll says in Eisenman's translation. Quote, I saw watchers, capitalized, in my vision, the dream vision. 2 men were fighting over me, holding a great contest over me. I asked them, who are you, that you are thus empowered over me? They answered, we have been empowered and rule over all mankind. And they said to me, which of us do you choose to rule you? I raised my eyes and I looked. One of them was terrifying in his appearance, like a serpent, his cloak many-colored and yet very dark, which might mean black but glistening, maybe with lights or something that sparkled in colors, or even a technology. And I looked again, and in his appearance, his visage like a viper. A viper is the head of a snake. I replied to him, "This watcher, who is he?" He answered, "This watcher, his three names are Belial, and Prince of Darkness, and King of Evil." And I said to the other watcher, "My lord, what dominion have you?" He answered, "Well, you saw the viper, and he is empowered over all darkness, while I am empowered over all light. My three names are Michael, Prince of Light, and King of Righteousness." His physical description is said to have been torn from the Dead Sea Scroll, meaning that the fragment was missing, where there would have been a description of Michael, the Prince of Light. But who knows anymore? Even that might have been secretly hidden, a piece of information about something that, again, they didn't want made public for reasons unknown. All of this came alive for me on a trip to Cusco, Peru in June of 1987, when I spent 4 days and 4 nights at 22,000 feet altitude at what is known as the Incan Festival of Cororiti. It's held on top of an Andes peak that is hard to pronounce. I call it Calquipunco. Cororiti loosely translates as star and snow, and it is dedicated to the Pleiades, that cluster of blue stars that looks a little bit like a Little Dipper in the sky. And the Incas believe that the Pleiades have watched over and judged them with a ruling hand from the beginning of Incan consciousness. Now, that glacial snow at that mountain at 22,000 feet, according to legend, is where heaven and earth meet. It melts and puts water into the ground to grow plants which feed bodies and babies. An endless cycle of transformation from life to life, mineral to earth, to plant, to body, sex, birth, death. Inside that sacred snow, the Apu gods reside. Climbing Cororiti is a yearly ritual for several Inca tribes. It's like a penance in exchange for redemption, a kind of a renewal. You get down on your knees, you make totems on the ground, you get up to the ice, which is a little bit above 22,000 at 22,400. You carve out the ice, which is carving out the Apu. You put it on your back in a sling, and even at that altitude in that cold, the ice begins to melt. And as it melts, the Incas think that that is a redemption from any judgment of that which is in the Pleiades stars. Well, first, I traveled from Cusco, which is about 14,000 feet, by van with 5 other guys who were Incan and a couple of Americans. So we had Incans for guidance and cooking, and there were 2 or 3 of us from the United States. We drove the first day on very bumpy, very dusty roads through brown hills. There were llamas everywhere, tiptoeing along these steep slopes. And as we got higher, the dark hills receded, and you started becoming closer and closer to these white Andean peaks. The first camp that we stopped was at 14,000 feet. And that's where we got by van, and the temperature that night was below freezing. And we all gathered in one cook tent to drink cocoa tea for the altitude and to eat some hot food that the Incas will help you with when you're there in Peru to try to counteract the high altitudes that you're always in, unless you're at the ocean. After dinner, in spite of the cold, just because ever since I was old enough to walk and go outdoors, being at night under stars, and my parents knew I always wanted to be outdoors at night, I begged for a telescope. The stars in the night were my I guess, my passion as a child, and they continue to this day in many ways. And because I was sort of an amateur astronomer with my telescope at home, I was drawn, especially that night, 14,000 feet, very thin atmosphere, cold, clear. I wanted to see that sky. And I remember I walked out of the tent. I walked probably 100, 200 feet away. So I was completely alone in this high mountain. And the sky I've never ever seen stars ever anywhere else that looked like they did that night. And they were so beautiful. And off to the right was a large, sort of a triangle of stars. And I was staring at them, thinking, in a way, this is an alien sky to me that I do not think I had seen the Southern Hemisphere before then. I think that was my first trip. And I was staring the way you do when you know you're looking at stars, but you're looking at a completely different sky. And as I was staring at the triangle of stars with the Southern Cross over to my left, also equally beautiful, but there was something about this perfect little triangle of stars that captivated my attention. And I was thinking how fresh and beautiful they looked, more than I ever remembered stars looking. And there was this bright flash, almost like a snowball of light came right out from the center of this little pattern of these brilliant diamond-like stars. And my first thought, because I do like left brain factual things, could that be a satellite? And it just suddenly flashed right in the center of this beautiful triangle? And I waited with the idea that it would come out of the triangle, and then I'd see another flash and another flash, and I would have the experience of seeing a beautiful satellite going over this Incan Peruvian sky. But the next flash didn't come on a horizontal plane. It came from below the triangle of these stars. And then there was another. These are bright, almost like light is being thrown at you, is the way I remember it. And it was off to the right. And then I realized that the flashes were forming a triangle outside of the triangle of stars. And I didn't want to take my eyes off of this mind-blowing sky, but I wanted to move toward the tent where all the guys were and yell, "Come out here, I don't know what's happening." And so I'm trying to move but not take my eyes off of that triangle. And then, perhaps this is because I was in such awe at this point, I'll never know. But here's the Southern Cross over here. And the next action came from there, and it was as if you were looking at a Walt Disney movie where he would take lines or have a painter or Tinkerbell or something. A line that was a brilliant yellowish white, thick. It came right from the Southern Cross. It came right to the center of that triangle of stars. And now this line is in the sky, and I start running for the tent, screaming at the top, "You guys, you have to come out here." And I knew that they were eating and that they didn't want to come out into the cold, but I wanted somebody to witness this with me. One guy got out of the tent flap in time to see just the fading out of this line, which stayed there for several seconds. And I kind of stood, I didn't go back in the tent. I stood out there waiting for quite a while. Is something else going to happen? And then the words that were sort of in my thought words were, did all of this happen because I was so enthralled with the beauty of the sky and the stars and had always wanted to know, I have always wanted to know, Is there other life in this universe? What is it like? And that when you look at these beautiful stars and constellations, is something looking back at where we are. And that night, I remembered this question to myself. Was the white line showing me that another intelligence knew where my eyes and my mind had been focused only minutes before on that triangle that also ended up having a triangle of light around it in a triangle? Well, the next morning we were dressed in Arctic ski clothes and we mounted horses for the remaining 1,400 up to 2,000, or sorry, 20. We went up to 20,000 and 2,400 would be the next step where the ice and the Apu would be in the Corridi. And at that time, there were 20-some thousand people that were Incas who tried to make annual rituals out of this for the redemption from the Pleiades. And at night, that first night, all of them took out candles. And I tried to take a photograph, and I still remember it as one of those moments in life where you've never seen anything like this before either. 20,000 people holding candles. These were flames. This was not electronic. Over the top of the mountain part where 20,000 people were camped, there was no facilities. Everything was rock. You put your sleeping bag and tent on the rock. You had to deal with whatever you could in terms of facilities for your bodily needs. But at night, with a drums beating, just like a heart, it began to be. They had people that would change places with these drummers, so that they would never stop for 96 hours. They started on the first night and they kept going through the fourth night, constant drum beat. And as soon as the sun went down, all of the candles came out till sunrise. And as you stood there, the feeling was you could never tell. It became a mind challenge. Where is the sky, the stars? Can you tell them separately from the flames and the people, because they tended to merge together? And in this site, 200 or 300 years ago, a all rock church had been built by some Catholics, and where they built it was around a large rock that is part of this natural mountain. The two sheep herders said that they had seen light come and go into this rock, and that then there was the image of a man with a crown and a body and feet, as almost as if in a crucified position, cracked into this rock. And that's what the Catholics built, the only structure for, I don't know, hundreds of miles, is on top of this mountain where Corridi is held. So it's an odd mixture of the classic Inca, who want to assuage the judgment of the Pleiadians, and a Catholic-built church around a miracle rock that the Catholics said was a miracle that left the image of Christ. And on the first night, not ever having been there before, I went into the church to feel it out, to hear, to listen. It was totally packed with Incans, and again, just like the people with the candles on the outside, making the sea of stars on the land that blurred into the sea of stars in the sky. Inside the church, everybody was holding, with a kind of a holder, candles in their hands. Some people had a candle in all fingers. And as I moved my way through there, I saw how many people were sobbing, tears. I'll never know what was in their hearts and their minds and their souls of so many people packed together inside of rock, built around rock, honoring an avatar from 2,000 years ago. But I can say that it was like something shifted. And I left with a feeling of, maybe for the strongest time in my life, the sense of a pressure that I would say is my soul, that we have souls and they can have pressure inside of your body. And I moved along the wall around the people, listening to the drum beat. And I found on the other side of the church, I entered at one end and I came out, there was a circle of men. It was maybe 50 feet across. And right in the middle was a man. He was dressed with white on his face and with something in his hair that made me automatically think, oh, he's dressed like an angel. But what was he doing? He was raising a bullwhip that must have been 30 feet long and let it go, and it whipped, and he's whipping at another Incan across the other side of the circle. And that Incan was dressed with black and soot, and he was the devil. The devil also had a bullwhip, and as soon as he got the sting of the other one, the devil came even harder and whipped, and it went around the angel. And then they would go through some theatrical dance, and then they would uncoil each other from the whips, and they would start it all over again. And this went on for 4 days and 4 nights with the drum beating, with the bullwhips casting around and coiling an angel and a devil together until they uncoiled, with people who were sobbing, holding candles in the rock church around the rock with the image of an avatar. And as the devil and the angel would move around this circle, it was like they knew each other. They were on guard. They fought. They came apart. And they did this over and over until, to my shock, the devil and the angel came right to the center, this big circle, and they hugged each other. And then they went to the edges of the circle, and 2 more, another devil and another angel, whipped each other over and over. And I was standing next to one of my Inca friends from Cusco who had come on this trip. And I looked at him and I said, "Why didn't the angel win?" And he laughed. "It's my bias." And then he answered, this is a quote from him, "If the positive and negative get out of balance, the universe gets sick. The Incas believe that the positive and the negative must always struggle with each other and then embrace to keep the universe from falling apart." Close quote. He said that balance, this is the key to survival. Nothing was all good or all bad. The universe was neutral, not harsh. Its creator dreamed, observed, and loved us all. He said, keep an open mind always. And days later, he said, tears were not needed for the 14 women and babies who died during those 4 days that I was at Corridi, cold during that festival because they only had sandals, they only had blouses, and their skin, they died of freezing. The moment of death, he explained, was simply a walk into the next room of the dream. Kooridi stays with me, whether I'm in crop circles, examining mutilated animals, listening to people relate their experiences with something other than human. In these glimpses of other realities, a new cosmology is emerging, a different understanding about who we are, how the universe works, and how human consciousness might be the key to contributing to this spiraling evolution that I'm beginning to think, like a fractal, is everything around us on this planet, in this solar system, to the edges of this universe, universes beyond. Everything is spiraling. Everything is evolving, some in entropy, some not in entropy. And always this decision: dark, light, neutral. I hope that my sharing this with you will help you, no matter what gets unfolded through the rest of the months of going into 2018 and beyond, from our government, from non-humans. We're at both an exciting time, a revolutionary time, and perhaps a dangerous time. And my prayer for all of us is that we are going to be soul-wise enough to feel the difference between the positive and the negative and the neutral. I love you guys for coming. I wish you and your family and your kitties and all of your animals great health. And I took longer tonight, but I'd be happy to take like 3 questions. I would like to hear your own questions.
Hi, Linda. First, I would like to thank Diffuse56, Tomcat721, Joseph Anthony, and Kevin McBride. Thank you so much, everyone, for your incredible super chats. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Davy Jones Locker has a great question. He'd like to know, Linda, are there any positive alien abductions?
Yes. I referenced them a little bit. I know people who have said to me, I felt the deepest love, but the deepest sadness about me, meaning the abductee is saying that's their feeling from the being in front of them. Great love and great sadness. And one of the most memorable, strangely enough, because this is one of the spookiest, eeriest of the creatures in the taxonomy of what we may be dealing with, and that's the tall praying mantis. And it's all part of this confusion and our learning, hopefully, about what we're really dealing with. And in this case, it was a praying mantis, and the man was from Hoboken, New York, across the river from Manhattan. And he was a struggling artist. And coming into his life were the tall praying mantis with little grays that he clearly knew were like androids that worked for the praying mantis. And what unfolded for, I think it was 30 years. They were collecting sperm. He was very clear they needed it for something. He was aware that he was providing a service, almost the way we would go and milk cows. But he said the love and the sadness that he felt from the praying mantis, that he also felt was so ancient that he couldn't comprehend how old it was, left him with a residue that is similar to others that I've interviewed. And for those who read Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, you will find discussions about this strange combination of ancient sadness and love from a praying mantis. Now, to them, this is positive. As somebody who has been trying to understand the truth behind what we may be dealing with, which could be deceptions and manipulations, and that phrase, some things are neither benign nor neutral, but perhaps there really are some intelligences that have been using this planet. Let's be straight about it, that there has been harvesting like a grocery store, a genetic pool, gold, molybdenum, this planet, water. It's probably been providing all kinds of things for perhaps 270 million years, as a DIA retiree told me. But if humans were manipulated into being by some of this geopolitical, territorial, conflicting group of civilizations, and it started with Homo erectus as a standing up primate first in Africa, and then there have been all these different models, including the Denisovans and the Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon, Homo sapiens sapien, this current model. I've heard some people in government and political situations that we've had a discussion about this, and they say, humanity can't handle this. That's why we've got to keep it secret. And I think that that's not correct. I think that the vast majority of people on this planet, certainly in India, where they believe in reincarnation, and they had the Vimanas with Vishnu and other areas around the planet, the concept that our Earth has been used, harvested, for a very long time is not any kind of a new idea. So as we move into 2018 of the 21st century, it may be that finally we are going to start having the whole planet introduced to these concepts. And I hope that the scary ones, like the praying mantis, if they are partially softened, if we get introduced to them, by the fact that there are a lot of humans who have been in their presence, interacted, in this case, provided sperm, and are alive and well today and can talk about their experience, that maybe there will be some kind of a merging. Maybe somebody wants there to be some kind of a merging. And then we have the difficult question of merging, you would think, goes to hybridization. If there have been a bunch of models of standing up primates, could Homo sapiens sapien be quietly being replaced by a new model that maybe wouldn't be so violent? These are the questions that I think are constructive for us all to discuss, so that we're not shocked, not broadsided, as each revelation continues to unfold. But I know that there are people who give good arguments about why it can't be revealed. And one of the things that you could help me with, not tonight, not right now, but I would love to have, whether it goes to the YouTube channel in comments, or you send me an email to earthfiles@earthfiles.com. I truly would like to know, for those of you in the audience who might be in the human abduction syndrome category or experiencers category, what your own experience has been, positive, negative, and whether you would like to be in a public dialogue as a person who has had an interaction consciously, not in dreams, consciously, with something that falls in the non-human category. How would you approach the rest of the planet? Because that's the question that's hanging right now, I'm sure, behind the scenes in these efforts now to finally, for the first time, start showing us why this technology is considered to be outside of any physics that we understand. Is it from another place in this universe? Is it from another dimension? Is it from another timeline? all of the above? And whatever the answer is, humans on planet Earth have been the focus of manipulation and interaction for a very long time while they've been kept in the dark. So in this season of Christmas and other holidays that have to do with a relationship with the unseen, and prayers for the most positive in health and joy and a planet without war. Those questions are questions that I would like to know what you think from those of you in the abduction syndrome. And on that note, I'm going to say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and that I hope we can keep unfolding this dialogue over 2018 as hopefully more and more information comes out. Thank you for being here. Merry Christmas.